Thank you as well to those who dedicated the program today and the individual classes. The program as a whole is dedicated in memory of Harav Pesach ben Avram Moshe HaKohen, Zichrono Livracha. And this particular session, Shimshon dying on a prayer, is dedicated by Rabbi Avraham Whitty in memory of his father, Rav Yitzchak Gamliel Whitty, Zichrono Livracha, and is dedicated by Rina and Irving Gottesman, wishing a refuah shlema to Ruth Bat Dina. We are, if you're using the packets, we're on page 11. I don't know if the announcement was made before, but if people have cell phones and they could silence them, that would be wonderful. Okay, we have 30 minutes to work with, or at this point, 29. Which means that I'm not able to do this with question and answer the way I would usually like to. We have a lot to fit in. We're going to be looking at a very difficult story. It is the last in a series of difficult stories for the last shofet, the last judge in the book of Shoftim, the book of Judges, to capture the story in 3 sentences. After he surrenders the secret of his strength to the Philistine woman Delilah, Shimshon is captured, blinded, and held for mockery by the Philistines. He pleads with God to restore his strength for one last feat of strength and vengeance to demolish the building in which he is held captive, killing thousands of Plishtim in the process. God grants his wish. Shimshon carries out the attack, which costs him his life. And our question in a discussion of failure is, isn't this fundamentally a failure? He's taking his own life. Don't we oppose that? Shouldn't Shimshon have persevered, like Joseph in jail, like generations of Jews who have suffered in exile? Is this a failure on the part of Shimshon? That's the question that I'd like to address. My answer is going to be no, just to let you know. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to this trouble. But Shimshon in general, by the way, just to make it clear, Shimshon in Hebrew, Samson in English, same person. Now, the Shimshon is a welter of contradictions. He is a Nazirite. He's not supposed to drink wine, but he spends a lot of time at parties. He is a shofet, a judge of Israel, who goes after a series of Philistine women. He is a warrior. He carries neither sword nor spear. He is a vaunted military hero, but he never wins a war, and he never leads an army. And the prophet Samuel, invokes Shimshon among the great leaders God sent to save us, and you find 2 opposite approaches among the commentators to that list that Shmuel gives. I brought it for you in sources 1 and 2 on the sheet, necessarily because of time. I'm not reading them aloud, but I brought them for you because I wanted you to be able to see them, and you can read them at some point. In source number 1, Ralbag speaks about the list of judges brought by Shmuel, and he says of Shimshon had to be somebody remarkably complete because he experiences miracles. He gets messages from God. He must be on a very, very high level. On the other hand, Don Isaac of Barbanel, who often agrees with Ralbag in his commentaries, says about Shimshon in source number 2 that he was Nif'am HaSeichel. Nif'am HaSeichel is quite the insult. It basically means, as I translated here, somebody of weak intellect. That Shimshon was not very bright. And you look at these 2 contradictory views, and I could bring a lot more. He's really quite a puzzle, this fellow Shimshon. In sources 3 and 4, I gave you links to classes that I've given. The first one is just general classes on the book of Shoftim, the book of Judges. And then the one in number 4 is from last year's Heroes and Villains program, when I spoke about Delilah the traitor. So that's the recording from that one. She's also worth learning about. But let's get into our story itself and see what we can understand. Story takes place roughly 10th century before the Common Era. The Jews entered the land of Canaan about 300 years before that. Chronologically, as I said, Shimshon may be the last judge presented in the book of Shoftim, and he's introduced to us really via his parents. His father's name is Manoah. The Talmud says his mother's name is Hatzlel Ponit. It's a name that's not found in the book of Judges, but is found in the book of Chronicles and Divrei Hayamim. And Hatzlel Ponit, Shimshon's mother, is presented as a woman of surpassing righteousness, which is a key part of the whole story, because the Shimshon story in many ways is a polemic against marrying Philistine women, as Shimshon's mother is contrasted with all the Philistine women who you encounter in the story. She is remarkably righteous. God says to her, her son is going to save Israel. He has to be a Nazir. He doesn't drink wine. He's clearly expected not to cut his hair. There's some debate as to all the laws of being a Nazir, but that's our opening chapter in his story. If you're following on the sheets, it's where I wrote background. That's where I'm trying to give you some background. So in chapter 14, Shimshon courts a Philistine woman from Timnata. He actually marries her. At the wedding party, he presents a riddle to the people who are present. The riddle is based on a lion he killed on the way to the wedding party, because things happen when you're on the way to a wedding. So he presents them with this riddle. They don't know the answer to the riddle, and they stand to lose a lot of money. And so they get his Philistine wife to give them the secret to answer the riddle. Shimshon is very angry, and so he kills a bunch of Philistines, and then he walks away. Chapter 15, he comes back for his wife, and he finds out she's actually married to somebody else. So first he takes revenge against the Philistines. He ties the tails of 300 foxes together, puts torches in the spot where he has tied the tails together, and then sets them loose in the Philistine fields. If they burn the fields, no word on the fate of the foxes, but we can guess. And then after that, he has a third fight with the Philistines because the Philistines attack his wife and her father. They're angry that they caused Shimshon to be angry at the Philistines, and Shimshon then attacks those who had attacked his wife and her father. Then the Philistines approach the Jewish tribe of Judah, and say, "Turn over Shimshon. We want you to turn over Samson to us." Shimshon goes along with it. When they come to him, he says, "No problem. Just you don't attack me, and everything is good." So they tie him up, they hand him over to the Plishtim. Shimshon finds the jawbone of a donkey, and he uses it as a weapon to strike the Plishtim, to strike the Philistines. Then he is really thirsty. He pleads with God, "Would you give me some water, please?" God miraculously sends him some water. And that brings us to chapter 16. If you're thinking now, there's an awful lot of text about Shimshon, you are right. We get more information about him than almost anybody else in Navi, in the prophets. It's a fantastic story in all meanings of the word. So in the beginning of chapter 16, Shimshon takes a journey to Aza, which people, thanks to the British, call Gaza. It's a Philistine city, maybe the central Philistine city. The commentary Malbim, or Mayor Leibush Weiser, suggests that Shimshon is actually looking for a fight. He stays at an inn, possibly with a Plishti woman at the inn. That's less clear. The Plishtim surround Shimshon at night. He finds out. He goes out to the entrance of the city, takes the gate of the city on his shoulders, and carries it off to Hebron. If you know Israeli geography, right, from Aza by the Mediterranean to Hebron, right, other side of the country. Granted, it's not that wide a country, but still, right, that's a schlep. But that's what he does. He carries away the gate of Aza. And then you get the story of Shimshon and a third Philistine woman. And this is, of course, the famous Delilah. Shimshon falls for her. She agrees to work as a double agent or a single agent, I suppose, for the Plishtim against Shimshon. And she tries to get the secret of his strength. And she persuades him over time in a series of steps to explain how it is that he is so strong. He finally explains that it comes from his hair, and if his hair is cut, he will lose his strength. And that's where we pick up on the sheets. Source number 5 on the sheets. I'm just going to read my English out loud. I have the Hebrew here as well. The English on this is from the JPS 1985 translation. Sensing that he had confided everything to her, Delilah sent for the lords of the Philistines with this message: "Come up once more. He has confided everything to me," because they kept coming in thinking that she had finally found out the secret, and it turned out not to be the secret. Now she says, "No, this is it." And how she knows that is a good question, topic for another time, but she believes that now it's true. The lords of the Philistines came up, brought the money with them that they had promised her. She lulled him to sleep on her lap. She called in a man. She had him cut off the 7 locks of his head. Thus she weakened him and made him helpless. His strength slipped away from him. She cries out, waking him up, "Shimshon, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep, thinking he would break loose and shake himself free as he had the other times, for he did not know the Lord had departed from him. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Aza, shackled him in bronze fetters, and he became a mill slave in the prison. Shimshon is now captured, and that brings us to the scene of Shimshon's death. So jump down to number 6, please. The Hebrew starts at the bottom, but again, the English is on the next side. After his hair was cut off, it began to grow back, which tells you he probably wasn't that old, I guess. After his hair was cut off, it began to grow back. And you can see sort of the narrator saying, the Philistines are now in trouble. Malbim believes that the hair actually grew unusually quickly, which is why the Philistines weren't alert to it. The word that's used in the Hebrew for it, for those who can catch the Hebrew, is tzimeach, and he suggests that's stronger than samach. It suggests that it grew back unusually quickly. You could argue that point. Doesn't matter for our purposes, but now keep on reading. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to their god Dagon and to make merry. They chanted, "Our God has delivered into our hands our enemy Samson." When the people saw this, they sang praises to their God, chanting, "Our God has delivered into our hands the enemy who devastated our land and who slew so many of us." As their spirits rose, they said, "Call Samson here and let him dance for us." Samson was fetched from the prison and he danced for them. Then they put him between the pillars. Fascinating story going on here. You read it and you think it's the degradation of a man who the Philistines have been frightened of. Now he's brought so low, he's dancing for them to entertain them. However, Professor Elitzur says, not so fast. That's not what's going on. Look at the next verse. Samson said to the boy who was leading him by the hand, "Let go of me and let me feel the pillars that the temple rests upon, that I may lean on them." Samson is blind, right? They knocked out his eyes. How does he know there are pillars there? How does he know that they are the pillars that the building rests on? Take a look at Professor Elitzur's comment in source number 7. Shimshon went along with it with joy and desire. This was an opportunity for him. And it appears that Shimshon knew the building from before this. Shimshon has been hanging out with the Philistines, right? He's had 3 Philistine consorts, wives, whatever exactly the different relationships were. He is somebody who knows exactly where he is. When they bring him out to dance, he goes willingly in order to get himself in position for what is going to happen next. That's the idea. Take a look now as the text continues back in number 6. The temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there. There were some 3,000 men and women on the roof watching Samson dance. There actually is some debate as to whether it's saying there are 3,000 on the roof and elsewhere in the building, or there are 3,000 there altogether. Commentators discuss that. Then Samson called to the Lord, "O Lord God, please remember me and give me strength just this once, O God, to take revenge of the Philistines, if only for one of my 2 eyes." Now, this is one of those cases where when you read a translation, you get cheated. Because translations, the line translation treason, it's certainly true here, and it's true in many cases. They're giving you a bias in the way you read the sentence. The Hebrew said, "V'inakama nekam achat mishtei einai miplishtim." I will take revenge for one of my eyes from the Plishtim. They translated here as if only for one of my 2 eyes. That's going to matter. Sounds trivial? It's not trivial. We'll see. He says, "I want revenge for one of my 2 eyes." He embraced the 2 middle pillars that the temple rested on, one with his right arm, one with his left, and leaned against them. Samson cried, "Let me die with the Philistines," and he pulled with all his might. The temple came crashing down on the lords and all the people in it. Those who were slain by him as he died outnumbered those who had been slain by him when he lived. His brothers and all his father's household came down and carried him up and buried him in the tomb of his father Manoach ben Sorah and Eshtaol. He had led Israel for 20 years. He does not succeed in defeating the Philistines. You have to know that. The Philistines oppressed the Jews long before this, and they continue to oppress them afterwards. As I said in the beginning, he doesn't have an army at his disposal. That's not who he is. He is a lone wolf warrior. Commentators suggest he is specifically a lone wolf because he doesn't want the Jews to suffer reprisal for the things that he does. So he goes in, he makes an attack, and then he leaves. He makes an attack, and then he leaves. Lives among the Philistines at various times. He does not succeed ultimately in defeating them. What exactly is it that he is doing here? So first of all, he asks for divine help for vengeance for one of his eyes. The Talmud suggests here that when he says this, he says to God, remember that I was a judge on Israel for 20 years, and I didn't ask any favors from anybody the entire time. What's the connection there? Where did they get that idea? 2 points. Number one, because this is actually the second time that the text says he judged them for 20 years. It said it earlier, it didn't need to repeat it. So it suggests that it's part of his sales pitch to God. But number two, because when a judge takes bribes, that is said to blind the judge. And so what the text is saying here, he said, I want revenge for my eyes because I never took a bribe. I never took anything from anybody. I didn't deserve this fate. I want vengeance for one of my eyes. However, what he does not explain yet is, what the Talmud does not explain yet is, what about the other eye? So we're going to talk about that. We have to figure that out. The Philistines, interestingly, just a side comment on the story, allow the Jews to bury him. Right? You notice that. They allow the Jews to bury Shimshon. So Midrash suggests that this is actually something that Jacob prayed for on behalf of his descendant Shimshon. But Don Isaac Abarbanel comments that it's actually a nice statement about the Philistines. At least they had that decency that they were willing to allow the burial. But let's get to the question now that I began with. Was this a failure? When Shimshon says that he is ready to die, when Shimshon takes his own life, does that represent failure? And the answer, I think, as I said, is no, for two reasons. First of all, we need to understand who Shimshon is better. Reading the story is insufficient. Go back to what we said about Shoftim chapter 13. What did we say happens in chapter 13? Haha, you have to remember. What did we say happens in chapter 13? His mother what? His mother is told that her son is going to save Israel. Shimshon knows it. Otherwise, the whole story doesn't make any sense. Shimshon is aware that his mother had an experience of being told supernaturally that he is going to save the Jews. Wow. What do you think that does to a person? Seriously, what do you think that does to a person to know that this was predicted before he was born? Supernaturally, somebody came to his mother and then his mother and father and said, your son is going to be special. He's going to fight to save Israel. We have a few people like this in the Torah for whom we are told they're going to be special. Rivka, for example, right? Eliezer at the well is there, right? The servant of Abraham is there to get a wife for Isaac. Whoever is going to be the wife of Isaac has to be somebody incredible, right? This is going to be a person responsible for the continuity of the Jewish people. And he pleads with God and he says, give me a sign. And God says, no problem, right? The sign that he says, if the woman who I meet at the well says the following script and offers the water for the camels, that's the one. And then when Rivka does that, he says to Rivka, you'll never believe it. And he tells Rivka's family, you'll never believe it. I'm standing at the well. I pleaded for God to provide this sign, and that's exactly what she did. It's a message to Rivka. You're the one. You are chosen by God, which I think gives her the confidence to do what she does in the next Torah portion, where she swaps the blessings and says, if I'm the one, then I know what's supposed to happen. The blessing goes to Yaakov, not to Esau. It gives you a degree of confidence in yourself when God has said, you're going to be the one. Same story plays out with Moshe, right? Moshe, God says to Moshe, you're the one who's going to save the Jews from Egypt. That gives Moshe the confidence to do many things. Let's say after the golden calf, to say to God, no, don't destroy them, right? When God has said, this is what I'm going to do, leave me alone, I'm going to do it. Moshe continues to push because, again, he has that confidence that comes with it. You see it also with Gideon among the Shoftim and others later on. It could be that this is what makes him so confident in his decisions. Watch what happens. Look carefully at his career. Source number 8. I gave you a collection of verses. First of all, when Shimshon encounters a Plishti woman and falls for her and says to his parents, this is the one I want to marry. Look at the sentence in source number 8. His father and mother said to him, is there no one among the daughters of your own kinsmen, among all our people? You have to go take a wife from the Philistines. And Samson answered his father, get me that one. JPS translation. Get me that one. It's actually not a bad translation. Okay. For she is the one that pleases me. That translation is off. You got to see the Hebrew. Kihi yashra be'enai. She is righteous in my eyes. She's the one who suits my eyes. And yes, the Talmud says, he said she's righteous in my eyes, and that's why he loses his eyes. But leave aside that point. He says, she's the one who's good in my eyes. I have the ability to make this decision. He is perpetually confident that he's going to be right and that God is going to help him. So that, look at the next verse that I quote you here in source number 8, still in number 8. When the tribe of Judah comes to arrest him and turn him over to the Philistines, what does he say to them? We have come down, they told him, to take you prisoner, to hand you over to the Philistines. Swear to me, said Samson to them, that you yourselves will not attack me, and then you could turn me over. It's going to be fine. I'm going to be okay. He always knows that he's going to be okay. At the end of that battle with the Philistines, keep reading, he was very thirsty. He called to the Lord, you yourself have granted this great victory through your servant, and must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised of the Philistines? He says, God has to provide me with water. And then he is in the city of Gaza, and the Philistines learned that he is there overnight. The Gazites learned that Samson had come there, so they gathered and laid an ambush for him in the town gate the whole night, right? And that's when he takes the gate and carries it off, right? How did they learn that Samson was there? It's very unclear. The Hebrew text just says, La'azatim le'mor, Shimshon hena. The Azatim, the people of Gaza, were told Samson came here. How did they know? Source number 9, Rabbi Meir Leibush Weiser in the Malbim says, you know who told them? Samson told them. I told you he was there to pick a fight. He instructed them to tell the people of Gaza that Shimshon had entered. He personally spread the word that Shimshon was in the city, only he didn't tell them that he himself was Shimshon. He went around telling them so that they would know he's there, he wants a fight, he is confident that he will win. Which takes us to source number, go back for a second, sorry. Go back for a second to the end of source number 5. He gave Delilah the secret of his strength, right? He told Delilah that if they cut his hair, he's going to lose his strength. What did he do when he woke up after his hair was cut? He awoke from his sleep. We're in source number 5, midway through. He awoke from his sleep thinking he would break loose and shake himself free as he had the other times, for he did not know the Lord had departed from him. He thinks God is going to be with him, even though he gave up the secret. It doesn't matter what I do. God is going to be with me. I was chosen. That's not my novelty. Take a look at source number 10. Radak says it. He says, why is it that Shimshon thinks he's going to win? Either he forgot in his sleep that which he had told her, or the meaning of, quote, he did not know, is that he knew his strength had left him, but he didn't know that God had left him. For he thought that even though his strength had left him, God would help him this time, lest he fall into the hands of the Philistines. So what I'm trying to show you here is that Shimshon has this incredible confidence that because he was chosen, number one, he is the man to defeat the Philistines, and number two, whatever happens, whatever he does wrong, Hashem is always going to take care of him. God is always going to be on his side. That's point number one. And then point number two is that Shimshon never says he wants to die. He expresses himself in a way that is consistent with accepting divine justice if he does die. But I think Shimshon believes he's getting out of this one also. What's my evidence? So first of all, he didn't ask to get out alive, right? He doesn't ask to get out alive. He says, let me just get some revenge. Look at what Ralbag says in source number 11. Rabbi Levi ben Gershom says, he was suited for this. Due to his seduction by these lowly things, he got involved in things he should never have gotten involved in, and therefore he deserved to die. And therefore he asked to die with the Philistines since he didn't deserve a greater miracle then. He knows he doesn't deserve a miracle. He only asks for vengeance for one eye. Rabbi Shmuel Adels, the Maharsha, in source number 12 says, you know why? Because he believes he deserves to lose an eye. He believes that he's done things that are wrong. He understands, if God does this to me, I deserve it. But in his heart of hearts, Shimshon expects that he's going to get out of this the same way he has gotten out of these things before. So I would contend the only failure, perhaps, is his overconfidence, right? His belief that no matter what, his chosenness is always going to protect him. And so he prays for God to be with him, just like God was with him with the water, just like God was with him every time he went out to fight, when he was at the inn, and so on. But this time it was too late. But fundamentally, he's not trying to die. He believes God is going to be with me just as God has always been with me. At the end, I brought you 3 review questions because I think those are useful, particularly in a 30-minute session, to make sure that we get the highlights. So what does he have in common with Rivka, Moshe, and Gideon? They've all been informed that they are special, that they have a mission from God. Where do we see him demonstrate the confidence? When he turns himself over to them, when he chooses the Philistine wife and justifies it that she is righteous in my eyes, I think that she's good, and therefore I'm able to take her. All the way through, when he sets himself up to bring down the palace of the Plishtin. And what was he thinking when he prayed for God's help in the Philistine palace? To my mind, he's accepting divine justice. If it has to happen, so be it. But with the feeling for himself that actually God is going to take care of him as he has taken care of him before. Thank you very much. And I will cede the floor with about 2 minutes to go. What do you know?